Welcome to another episode of Player Profiler Primetime News. I'm your host, Mike Lindberg, and with me is Coach Retzlaff. Today, we're diving into the 2025 NFL Draft Combine, breaking down the top players to watch, including some potential dynasty gems, plus a heated debate on Luther Burden versus Trey Harris. Before we get started, don't forget to check out the new YouTube channel, Player Profiler Now, which is almost at 1,000 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to jump in and stay ahead of the game with all the latest NFL news, draft analysis, and fantasy football insights. Let's get this party started, Jer. So welcome to the Combine Clash, where we're going to talk about 4 players to watch in the Combine this upcoming weekend. We're going to talk about, 4 players that, we got to have our eye on. And first up, we're going to talk about a highly touted running back to keep your eye on, Omarion Hampton, the standout from UNC, known for his power and versatility. Jeremiah, why don't you break him down for us and what you're looking for this weekend?
Hey, Mike, good to see you. Good to see everybody. Leave some comments in the chat. We love to talk with you. Rookie RB1 is spoken for with Ashton Janty. Janty goes early, round 2 of underdog drafts. From my film review on Omarion Hampton, I've noticed he has warning track power when it comes to long speed. Hampton will break long runs into the open field, and he's prone to getting tracked down. It's not to be confused with positive yardage and being an excellent running back. Hampton, though, is getting plenty of David Montgomery comps. It is very fitting to me in the open field. Somebody like Jahmyr Gibbs has that second gear to put the burners on, and there is no doubt Gibbs is taking the ball to the house. David Montgomery, there's a higher chance of being tracked down. And yes, I've seen the 75-yard touchdown run against the Chargers. That is a nitpick that I've come across when evaluating Omarion Hampton. Hampton gets high volume, positive yardage while following forward. That's a positive trait we want. We want our backs to get positive yardage falling forward. Ollie Gordon does that as well. Hampton has strength to move the pile forward. He also runs to contact. He is a big play waiting to happen. I kind of think of it like rope-a-dope. Eventually, he tires his opponent out, and he busts a long run. From PFF, Hampton ranked 4th in runs of greater than 15 yards with 26. So there it is. He's getting those 4-yard chunks. He's beating down his opponent, and then he's got that 15-yard run or more in him. However, Hampton does get tracked down. So what I'm looking for is the 40 time in the 4.4s. It's getting talked up. If Hampton does that, it will boost his stock even more. If Hampton doesn't, on the contrary, I won't be concerned, but do see that tendency pattern in him. Not having elite long speed does not preclude Hampton from being a successful running back in the NFL. Daniel Jeremiah recently mocked Omarion Hampton in round 1 to the Chargers with pick 22. The Chargers would be a nut landing spot. Funny enough, on Mind a Mansion, the Podfather and Scott Connor discuss how viable Najee Harris would be to sign with the Chargers. However, if the Chargers take the rookie in Omarion Hampton, it will be wheels up for him. So really, I'm looking for Hampton. He's got a complete game. He's there with the receptions. He had 29 his sophomore year, and his junior year, he had 38. So all in all, I want to see Hampton's 40-yard time. The 3-down skill set is there. There's viable spots. Chargers, Vikings would be nut landing spots. But again, if we see that 4.4s in the 40, it'll be hard to pick on that detraction of the pulling against Omarion Hampton's long speed. But RB 2 through 5, landing spot, and some of this combine action is definitely going to influence how they do. I'm looking out for Omarion Hampton. Now, here's a player you don't hear too much about, but part of it is what's going to go into what position he plays. Mike, can you tell us about Savion Williams?
Yeah, I'm looking at him because of his size. He's a kind of a freak athletic athlete. So, at the combine, he's one of the more intriguing wide receiver prospects, offering that, unique blend of size, speed, explosiveness. He's got scouts buzzing. His standout 2023 at TCU saw him rack up 60 catches, 611 yards, and 6 touchdowns, proving he can have the ability to make big plays. However, it's his physical attributes that have teams excited about his potential. 6'5", 225 pounds. He possesses, that rare combination of strength, athleticism that could make him a dominant force in the NFL. But while his tape shows flashes of brilliance, the combine will be critical to him proving that his athleticism matches his hype, particularly in the testing of speed and agility. The combine will be a pivotal moment for Williams' draft journey. His physical tools suggest he has the potential to thrive at the next level, but key performance metrics such as the 40-yard dash time and agility drills will determine if he can truly unlock that deep threat weapon that we are looking to see him be. Particularly another aspect that we're going to be looking at is his drops. He has a 10% drop rate. A strong performance in the ball catching drills could ease some of the worries about him and solidify his position as a potential playmaker at the next level. We talked about his height, his weight. He's a physical specimen. That 40-yard dash, he's going to line up. It's going to be critical for him to do well there. Yards after the catch, he's known for making defenders miss. So his yards after the catch ability will be tested through the agility drills, showcasing his ability to create after the catch. And, that drop rate, like I mentioned, his career drop rate exceeding 10%. It raises questions about his hands, but a strong showing in those catching drills could demonstrate an improvement and potential. So Savion Williams is a dynamic playmaker with a wide range of skills, but the combine will ultimately test to see if he can refine his game and realize his full potential. When it comes to Williams, his combine performance might just be the key that unlocks a world of fantasy football possibilities. So I'm really hyped about him. And you know what else I'm hyped about is that Dynasty Dominator. It has helped me through the years. Let's get the Podfather to run it down for us there, Jer.
Hey, what if I told you there was a Dynasty app where you could get player lifetime values, evaluate trades, including draft picks out to 2028, compare the advanced metrics of two players, look up the sentiment, buy, sell, hold on players? Well, there is a mobile app that has all of that and more called the Dynasty Dominator, and it's $5 in the App Store on Google Play. This is my gift to you, the most affordable Dynasty League domination app available today. And if you already have it, the 2025 class is ready to download. Let's go!
You're on mute, Jer.
Sorry, mate. As you have it up into the NFL draft, if you're really trying to brush up on your rookies, by all means, get the app, get locked in with all the products we have at Player Profiler. Another player, second player for me, Mike, is Isaiah Bond. Funny enough, we discussed Isaiah Bond on the Dynasty Pulse. I was intrigued by Matthew Golden and being excited about seeing his stock rise from Texas, wide receiver. Biggs talked up Isaiah Bond plenty and has me intrigued on Isaiah Bond. Bond right now, though, is not being mocked in Daniel Jeremiah or Bucky Brooks mocks on NFL.com. Those are two guys that I tend to look over at NFL.com. Of course, I like to read all of them. Ed Elholm, Cynthia Frulin. He could certainly be a riser, Isaiah Bond. PFF's Big Board 2025 has Bond ranked 86 overall in round 3. Isaiah Bond, 20.9 years old, coming out after a down junior season. 5'11", 180, will get his official height and weight at the combine. Funny enough, though, Xavier Worthy is 5'11", 172. Biggs did speak to Texas has a type. Xavier Worthy set the record for the 40, a 4.21 at last year's combine. Should Bond break the record or come razor thin close, this will be a boost to his stock. From a Socratic method reflection angle, you might ask yourself, why would Isaiah Bond come out after a down year? 34 catches, 540 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns in 14 games. Bond's junior year, didn't live up to the ascension we were looking for after his sophomore year, where he had 49 catches and 671 yards. From being a dynasty gamer and following the NFL for so long, we know how this works. Isaiah Bond got the word from enough scouts, his agent, and internal team that he could get selected in the NFL draft. Isaiah Bond definitely has the NFL Combine circled on his calendar. Bond knows he can raise his stock big time. Bond has a 633 scouting grade on NFL.com for the Combine attendees, which is 6 amongst wideouts. Those wide receivers in order are Luther Burden at the top, who we'll get to, Isaiah Bond's teammate Matthew Golden, Teteroa McMillan, Emeka Ibuka, who I love, and Trey Harris, who you'll speak to later, Mike. Bond, with an impactful performance at the NFL Combine, will get himself closer to the top 5 wideouts than is his current perception. From some rookie mock data that has been collected over at DD Fantasy Football, Bond is going at pick 30 in round 3 of rookie drafts behind Stanford's Alec Manor and Utah State's Jalen Royals. The big 5 wide receiver cutoff with Trey Harris is there at pick 16. So there is a gap in rookie drafts mocks in round 2. I am in a mock right now where I saw, actually it finished today, Isaiah Bond went at the 3-1, pick 25. That's going to creep up with a good NFL Combine performance. Particularly, we're watching out Saturday, QBs, receivers, running backs, they're set to test. The NFL is so smart. Thank you, NFL, for having quarterbacks, receivers, running backs roll on Saturday when people are at home and can watch. They can dedicate an entire day and maybe just squeeze out a little early on Friday and lock in on the tight ends. Now, speaking of a running back, can you tell us, Mike, about Dylan Sampson? We know about the top 5 running backs, but there's some other guys, Devin Neal, Dylan Sampson. Tell us more about Dylan Sampson.
Well, he's known for his explosive speed and versatility. Former Tennessee Volunteer has put together an impressive college career and has the traits that make him a dynamic threat at the next level. But he's only 5'11", 200 pounds. So the size could be something that people are going to be looking at here. And it's a key metric to watch out for. But his 40-yard dash will be a key metric to watch because that straight line speed is one of the standout traits. Sampson's speed allows him to take over games, and strong combine performance could catapult him into some fantasy football relevance sooner rather than later. Beyond his blazing speed, Sampson has the potential to be a true dual threat back. You know what I mean? Like, he's got that potential, but that size is always going to be something that's going to be looming over him. So we're going to see what he weighs in at, yards after after contact. He had 74 missed tackles in 2024. His ability to make plays after contact shows he's hard to stop when he gets moving. Versatility, Sampson's ability to run gap schemes and make quick cuts and perform well in space makes him a potential 3-down back in the NFL. His third down conversions, he converted 80% of his third down carries with 4 or fewer yards to go in 2024, showcasing his reliability in clutch moments. His pass protection, while his skills aren't perfect, he has the foundation to be a competent pass protector, helping him get more reps in the NFL. At the Combine, Dylan Sampson has the opportunity to show that he's more than just a college standout. He can be a fantasy football asset from day one. His speed, agility, and his ability to break tackles make him a high upside candidate in dynasty leagues, and a strong performance could elevate him into a key fantasy contributor. If Sampson can show well his full range of skills, he could be a sleeper pick, which will lead him into the NFL in a fantasy football realm. 4.3 40-yard dash, well, that would be a game changer for him. So, folks, if you're enjoying the show, don't miss out on more exclusive content. Be sure to subscribe to the Player Profiler Now YouTube channel, and also follow us on X at Player @profiler_NFL. And get us on the website where you're going to find all our great content, especially on the news channel. So www.playerprofiler.com/news for all your breaking news and impact in fantasy football. Now, Jeremiah, it's one of our fun segments here. Let's get into our bullish and bearish.
0-1. MO, come on.
So you love to see your stock portfolio go green. Psychologically, it's just so good for your psyche, for the dopamine. I am bullish on Bryce Young in 2025 on our Player Profiler Dynasty ranks. Bryce Young right now, QB 24. So think of that context for Superflex. Affordability is there for Bryce Young, just ahead of Sam Darnold, who I am down on, and Ole Miss rookie Jackson Dart, who is getting first-round hype. Bryce Young is just behind rookies Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Funny enough, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, it's coming out. They're not going to throw out the combine. Who cares? You have so many games of film, actual competition, true competition, where Ward and Sanders threw. Recall Shedeur Sanders talking to some high-ranking teams in the draft. Shedeur Sanders is going to get very early draft capital. Cam Ward as well. They can play along as they need to. This is not a lack of competitiveness. But funny enough, that's an aside. Bryce Young is just behind them. And I'm very curious if Bryce Young were in this class. I feel like he would be right at the top. Being benched, though, was one of the best things for Bryce Young. Andy Dalton is a professional quarterback who's had a very respectable career. There is something to being able to see how it's done. Bryce Young was the QB1 from the jump for the Panthers. So being able to see how Andy Dalton went about the practice week leading up to the game had to be beneficial. It was multiple weeks. It relieved some pressure. From an ego standpoint, it is easy to let being benched damage your psyche. Bryce Young really handled it well. He's had support from Baker Mayfield, who knows what it's like to struggle. Mayfield and Young have that in common, being former 101 picks in the NFL draft. They have that in common. It really goes to show you that there are more people out there to see you succeed than you realize if you ever get down over there, even amongst your competitors. So there's a fraternal nature to it. And in a very down moment publicly, we really saw it. It was rock bottom from a career standpoint for Bryce Young. Bryce Young found that support. Bryce Young ended up third at QB in rushing touchdowns with 6. I'm not so sure that will repeat. But then again, Baker Mayfield got a little more brave with his rushing. Maybe it's just a small element to Bryce Young's game that he can add in, especially close to the red zone. Bryce Young was 8th in deep ball accuracy rating, 6th in air yards per attempt at 8.8, 13th in best ball points added with 28.9. PFF measured Young as 7th in big time throws with 27. Week 16, week 18. Week 16 versus the Cardinals, Young was QB2 overall. Week 18 versus the Falcons, Bryce Young, QB1 in a shootout with the Falcons. Let's talk about that game. The Week 18 Panthers versus Falcons game was a preview of what the NFC South will look like over the next decade. Bryce Young threw for 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he rushed for 2 touchdowns total. So 5 touchdowns in all. Keep in mind, Bryce Young had a very weak supporting cast in 2024. Chuba Hubbard was the lone consistent bright spot. Adam Thielen won't be with Carolina for the long haul. Jonathan Brooks' career is in peril. Jatavion Sanders has shown flashes, but it takes time as a tight end. There's flashes there, but it's going to take a little bit of time, like a fine wine. Xavier Legette was dropping game-winning touchdown passes. Remember that game against the Philadelphia Eagles? And you're left with undrafted gem Jalen Coker as your lone hope for long-term pass-catching weapons. What is impressive is what Bryce Young showed, all this growth with a terrible supporting cast. Get this man some weapons and watch his career take off. I am bullish on Bryce Young in 2025. Let's apply the same energy for weapons for Bryce Young that has been afforded to CJ Stroud. Mike, what do you got on James Cook? Bearish in 2025.
Yeah, I'm a little more bearish on James Cook after a solid 2024. Actually, a solid 2 seasons in a row here. But moving forward, little more bearish on his ability to sustain that success in 2024. While it was impressive, he did have over 1,000 yards rushing and an incredible 19 touchdowns, was boasted by a spike in touchdowns that will be hard to replicate in 2025. One of the biggest factors against Cook is the presence of Josh Allen and that Bills goal line attack. Allen is notorious for stealing red zone touchdowns, and that trend is unlikely to change as long as the dual threat quarterback is taking carries inside the 5-yard line. Cook's touchdown upside will be capped. It's tough to count on Cook to maintain his high touchdown total with Allen siphoning off valuable opportunities near the red zone. Additionally, the emergence of Ray Davis could further limit Cook's workload. Davis has shown flashes on his own ability with a very, small piece of the pie, if you will, and with a potential to earn more snaps in 2025, it's likely Cook's role will decrease. The Bills have historically relied on a committee approach in their backfield, and there's no reason to believe that this trend won't continue with Davis in the mix. Cook's situation is going to get even more cloudier depending on what happens in the draft. They have some draft capital here, and they could, pick a running back in such a deep class that we talked about nonstop on our shows. So on the top of this, there is some some off-field concerns. His contract situation, it adds another layer of uncertainty. The 26-year-old has been vocal about wanting a significant pay raise, with reportedly indicating he is seeking upwards of $15 million in the 2-year span here. That would make him one of the highest paid running backs in the league, but Cook's performance has not been consistent enough to justify such a level of salary. The Bills have tended to avoid giving running backs large long-term contracts in the past, and Cook's desire for top-tier pay could lead to contract disputes or even a holdout. These types of off-field distractions could impact his focus and production if he doesn't get the deal he's looking for. So, all things considered, while his solid fantasy season in 2024 was great, I'm skeptical about his ability to repeat that performance in 2025 between the challenges of sharing a backfield with Ray Davis, the ever-present threat of Josh Allen taking goal line carries, and the potential of the addition of a rookie running back. Cook's fantasy stock is trending downward, in my opinion. Add that contract uncertainty, and there's just too many factors working against him to view him as that top-tier option moving forward.
Hey, funny enough, Mike, with James Cook, his archetype coming out of college was he's just going to be this pass catcher. And then he ended up being a between the tackles sort of back. I can remember there was an over-under where I bet over either 1 or 1.5. It was 0.5 or 1.5 receptions. And he didn't even get 1 reception. That's what it was. The prop was so low. I was a sucker for it. I failed. James Cook has not had that pass receiving archetype that you would have hoped. And funny enough, Tyler Johnson took away some of that thunder as well. We got a question, Mike, from Paul in the comments in the chat. Thoughts on Michael Penix for 2025? For a perspective on our dynasty rankings, Penix Jr. is ranked 15th. So we are bullish on him collectively. I'm personally, but as a brand, 15th overall in dynasty. That is high QB2 material, especially considering Superflex leagues. And that's not a far push from QB1 status. I would just venture to say 6-point passing touchdowns. I like Penix even more. Not quite the rusher that you want in a 4-point passing touchdown league. You're going to need a little bit more running pure on the pass. But with Drake London, Darnell Mooney, I really am bullish on Michael Penix Jr. And the beauty is, if you have him on your roster, you most likely got Penix Jr. in the second round of your rookie drafts. Just stealing a quarterback in that range should be illegal. Mike, what do you got on Michael Penix Jr. in 2025?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you there. I think he's got a lot of upside there with his situation and how he finished 2024. Like, just finished the season strong. He's not a rookie, essentially. I mean, he played so much in college and stuff. So, he's got that experience. He's coming into a system here where now he's a little bit more familiar with. We're hearing some rumblings about Kirk Cousins playing injured. I mean, that's all fluff in the air now, and it's in the past. So let's move on. Let's get this Penix up in the air, and let's get him into our lineups, because I think he's going to be, well sought after in these startups come this offseason here. So yeah, I agree with you there. Now
there you have it, folks. Penix in the air all the way up in 2025. Now let's go. We did bullish bearish. Time for Coach's Corner. I'm going to do a little control plus action. I want you to see the Dolphins that I have in the queue. And right now, Dolphins review. Coming off the season that they had, the Dolphins just present plenty of decisions on underdog right now. They are a team that without Tua Tagovailoa came to a gridlock without any viable backup QB. Please send Will Howard to the Dolphins so we can get at least some competence when Tua is out. That was very tough to watch. Take Devon Achane right now, RB4 at the 1-2 turn. Achane goes just ahead of Derrick Henry and Ashton Janty, and just behind Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors. Of those five, I wouldn't blame anyone for rotating every fifth pick with each player. Achane now is at his ceiling price. In the double-digit rounds, you were able to get Achane his rookie season. You could get Achane last year in the third round, and it seemed expensive. If you paid up, it paid off. Devon Achane now, you've got to pay the piper. 907 rushing yards for a 4.5 yard per carry average. Achane made his money off his 78 receptions in 2024 for 592 yards and 12 total touchdowns. Achane gained some muscle weight in 2024, and his explosive rating at Player Profiler surprisingly sits at a 99.8, ranking him 22nd. So we didn't really see that long speed. I'm not saying that that's gone, but it was a lot of utilization in the passing game. Achane was first in reception, so there it is, and receiving yards. 8th in total touchdowns. So touchdown, it's still the name of the game. In half-point PPR and PPR, you want to get in the end zone, and Achane certainly did that. Achane was second in targets with 87. 5th in best ball points added, so we're talking about underdog here. 181.2, which is what we want. Achane ran pure on health in 2024 with 17 games played. This is his ceiling price, but even in a half-point format, Achane is still a savvy selection, so have him in your rotation. But as much of a truther as I am for Devon Achane, I am investigating cashing out cross-positionally where I can, if I can improve at quarterback, if I can go and get a hammer wide receiver. I am going to shop Achane. It's one of those, if I get a good offer, a proper offer in return, I'll take it. If not, I know what I've got. You know what you've got at home. Devon Achane is certainly comfortable on your rosters. No need to push a trade. Now, speaking of somebody who might have a little bit more liquidity near the end of his career here, Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 12 on underdog. He goes at the 2-3 turn. Hill goes just ahead of T. Higgins and Terry McLaurin, and just behind Bucky Irving. The market still likes Tyreek Hill's year-over-year production over what T. Higgins just did. Granted, it was only 11 games for Higgins, and McLaurin's repeatability by just a smidge. McLaurin finally had a career year, finally got himself a quarterback with Jaden Daniels. Tyreek Hill, though, presents a massive dip opportunity. Wide receiver 18 in 2024. Tyreek was a top 3 pick in 2024 and was a total letdown compared to his ADP. Tyreek Hill is somewhere between his 12.8 fantasy points per game and 2023's 23.5 fantasy points per game, which was second at wide receiver, which necessitated such a top 3 ADP. Now let's look at Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 30 in round 5. Waddle is right between Jordan Addison and Chris Olave. I'd prefer Jordan Addison, but feel this is a nice blend and mix of wideouts to where you can get some even Jalen Waddle exposure to the players in the queue. Jalen Waddle presents a unique opportunity prior to the NFL draft and free agency in that you can click on him at his ADP with the hopes that maybe things aren't all patched up between the Dolphins and Tyreek Hill. There are cracks in the foundation. They've shown publicly. So despite things appearing well publicly, don't be surprised when teams come calling for Tyreek Hill services. Just look out for the Schefter tweet, Rappaport tweet. Teams are investigating a tweet or a trade for Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle is a preemptive pick in round 5 with a massive payout in the event of a Tyreek Hill trade. Waddle's first 2 seasons, 116 and 104 receptions. I feel like that has to be recalled for people who have the short-term memory. The likelihood of Waddle regressing back to his first 2 years' production is greater than him sinking to mediocrity. If you can find anyone sour on Waddle in Dynasty, go out and acquire Jalen Waddle before the price goes up. Jonnu Smith, tight end 7 in round 8. Jonnu is in a tight end island where he's by himself, surrounded by QBs, receivers, and running backs at ADP. So at that point of the draft, it is personal preference. Do you go Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson? Do you go Matthew Golden or Jared Goff? You're getting the tight end 4 at tight end 7 prices in Jonnu Smith. 111 targets, ranked 4th. 88 receptions were also 4th in 2024. Jonnu was 9th in target share, 5th in target rate last year. Jonnu was 2nd in tight end touchdowns with 8, which was a product of being looked at in the red zone. 19 red zone targets, ranked 5th. The only damper that I can see in the case for Jonnu Smith is if the Dolphins do the unpredictable and get themselves Colston Loveland at pick 13. That's assuming Tyler Warren is gone. If Tyler Warren is being mocked right now to the Colts, if Tyler Warren is there for the Dolphins, that may be one of those unpredictable picks that happen, kind of like Brock Bowers to the Raiders when you had Michael Mayer. It didn't make sense at the time. It hurt it was cognitive dissonance that we had for our Michael Mayer exposure in our dynasty shares, but it ended up working because talent rises to the top. Tyler Warren would be a phenomenal pick. The NFL draft is always unpredictable. That would really throw a wrench in what Jonnu Smith has done. Tua, let's get to him. QB 20 in round 12. Tua is really only appealing for me, Mike, in these Dolphin stacks. Tua doesn't do it for me with rushing, and he has to run pure on his passing. Can he stay healthy? I'm really only incorporating Tua in 2025 with Dolphin stacks. Going back to Paul's question, take a guy like Tua and Michael Penix Jr. Let me re-roll as much as I can, if I can, with Michael Penix Jr. over Tua. Jalen Wright, RB49 in round 14. Ollie Gordon is in this range, and there is also Ray Davis, which Mike spoke to as well for the Buffalo Bills. Tyler Algier is also in this range, so he can't be slept on either. I wouldn't get too much exposure to Jalen Wright at the expense of these other backs. Jalen Wright did not impress me much at all last season. I had a boatload of him. I lit that money on fire. I made that mistake. Jalen Wright really doesn't create yardage from what I could tell last year. Wright and Blake Corum, they'll be highly sought after handcuffs, but I'm curious if the Dolphins will draft a running back on day 3. It sounds like, oh no, surely they wouldn't. But with Achane and Mostert, the Dolphins selected Jalen Wright. So what would stop the Dolphins having Achane and now Jalen Wright from going out in this rich running back class? Mike McDonald, he just wants to get any athletic player out there. What would stop them from doing that? I'm not saying it would be a threat to Devon Achane. I'm saying, though, it would be a threat to Jalen Wright. So just be careful on that. Malik Washington, wide receiver 87 in round 18. I've been getting Woody Marks as RB63 and Chigo Okonkwo as tight end 30. in this spot. Malik Washington, one of the few wide receiver handcuffs that would rise dramatically in the event that Tyreek Hill got traded or Hill and Waddle got hurt. What I would look to do in Dynasty is trade Malik Washington quickly after a Tyreek Hill exit. And in the meantime, the move on Underdog is to preemptively go about selecting Jalen Waddle before a rise in ADP. Mike, what do you think of my Miami Dolphins breakdown?
Yeah, I think you got a lot of really good options there, especially with these later round guys you're pegging in. And I like to see where these guys are headed. And it's going to add a lot of complexity here when we talk about Tyreek Hill potentially on the move. So that's, like you said, let's be savvy. Let's be on the board with that. And also the Jalen Wright take here, because he's been a hot name around here with, Raheem Mostert being cut there and being released. So, everybody was going right to X and just saying, hey, let's get some Jalen Wright here. Not so fast. Did he look that great? I don't know. He had a great 40 time, and that was really what people were looking for last year. And that what got him on the map again, because that was a really big benefactor for him, like needing to really test well. And I think he ran a 4.38, which was a really good time. And, he's got the metrics that could show well, but he didn't show anything with his opportunity last year. And there was plenty of them. So something to monitor here in this offseason. And I agree with you.
Mike, can you cook us something? I'm feeling pretty hungry right now. I need something from the chef's table.
Yeah, well, today I'm going to talk about some keep trade cut stuff here, and I went over the wide receivers, and I'm looking at just some values here, in my opinion, and some guys that I'm going to be staying away at where they're sitting right now within the keep trade cut market, and talking about some wide receivers here. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is Jerry Jeudy, and he's currently being ranked as player 98 on keep trade cut, which to me I think is a bargain. At just 26 years old, he's already posted 2 1,000-yard seasons, proven he's got the potential to be a top-tier wide receiver in a more stable offensive situation. He battled inconsistent quarterback play throughout his career, and Jeudy has still been able to carve out some significant roles in offenses. In 2024, he turned a career-high 90 receptions, showcasing his ability to command a heavy target share even in a down year for the Cleveland Browns offense. Judy's consistency and impressive skill set make him a valuable asset both in redraft and in dynasty leagues, with the upside to become a true wide receiver one if he's paired with a better quarterback. What makes Jeudy so enticing is his ability to produce in less than ideal environments. And these are what I'm looking for as the potential to really highlight him next year. Those 90 receptions, that 1,100 yards this year, 12 receptions and 94 yards in week 18. It was a standout performance with a third string quarterback, highlighting his ability to perform no matter who is in charge behind the line of scrimmage, calling the plays for the Browns. 40% target share, even in a down season. Jeudy still commanded a significant portion of his team's targets, making him a PPR gold mine. Over 60 yards in 9 out of 16 games. That's consistency to me. And I know there's uncertainty around the quarterback situation in Cleveland, but that's been the case throughout his whole career. And now he's really starting to put together some impressive stats if he could stay healthy. A guy that I'm bearish on that's kind of going around the same range here. So if you look at Jerry Jeudy at 98, and a guy that was a diamond in the rough headed into last year, people had a lot of stocks in Jaden Reed, and he's player 90 right now in keep trade cut. And that's a risky proposition when we look at what happened last year, the inconsistent play, injury concerns, and the unpredictability of his role in Green Bay's offense. Despite showing flashes of big playability, Reed's fantasy production has been marked by volatility, especially as the season wore on. He came out of the gates, we know, with just on fire this year. And, a lot of people had him, ranked in the top 12 in Dynasty after the first 5 games. Well, that early season promise, it suggested that potential for a breakout, but his inability to maintain that level of play and his struggles down the stretch make him a boomer bust wide receiver, and maybe a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 at best option headed into 2025. He had that dislocated shoulder that is going to require some attention, but no surgery. But his injury history, it adds a further complexity to his outlook. So he occasionally offers some flashes of brilliance, a big play upside, but his overall inconsistency, injury concerns, and role in a developing Packers offense makes him a risky asset at his current value until he can prove he can be more consistent producer across a full season. Reed will be a gamble with a lot more downside than upside. So buyer beware, as Reed may leave you with more frustration than fantasy points. Now let's get into some of the guys that, are a little bit further down the rankings, guys that are a little bit more of these diamonds in the rough, or guys that we're trying to discover and see if they're really the guys that we really want to have later on in the drafts. And a guy that I'm liking right now, sitting at 136 on Keep Trade Cut, is Jawan Jennings, and he's an underrated gem for fantasy gamers looking for a valuable late round deep league steal, with most of the attention that goes to the flashy talents in the 49ers offense. Jennings had quietly emerged as a consistent contributor, finishing with career highs in receptions, targets, yards, touchdowns. With the 49ers offense loaded with stars, Jennings did well to carve out a role, and the upside, it remains clear, especially if Deebo Samuel or other major contributors leave in 2025. So Jennings will likely even have a bigger role and opportunity to thrive. What makes him particularly valuable is ability to deliver in moments that matter. His standout performance is like his 11 catch, 175-yard, 3 touchdown performance against the Rams proves he's capable of big games in important moments. These kinds of performances just don't happen by accident. They show that a player with legitimate talent and explosive potential, despite playing in an offense stacked with playmakers, he has consistently found ways to make an impact when called upon, making him an appealing fantasy asset, moving forward. So I like his situation and I like his outlook. And a guy that I don't necessarily like at his Keep Trade Cut price right now is Michael Pittman Jr. sitting at 116. It's a risky potential for bad value for fantasy gamers, especially when you're factoring in his recent performances and his ongoing back issues. Despite playing through a fractured back for most of 2024, Pittman's production looked noticeably diving into, since his years past. 69 receptions, 808 yards, and just 3 touchdowns were career lows, and it's tough not to ignore his drops that occurred in his 16 games. In 2023, on the other hand, he had career highs. 109 for catches, 1,100 yards, making it clear that he has the potential to be a force when healthy. But, paired up with, the uncertainty of a quarterback, they don't know what's going to happen with that situation with Anthony Richardson. He still has plenty of room to grow, but the growth hinges on the development of Richardson, who has struggled with his passing accuracy his rookie year and this year as well. So with those stats compared to his, breakout 2023 campaign, Pittman only mustered 3 touchdowns last year, and it's going to be more of the same. So at a value of, wide receiver 116, I just think that there's going to be a lot of growing pains still happening in Indianapolis. His back issues, the lack of touchdowns, and the potential for continued quarterback instability. Michael Pittman Jr. is a player that represents just too much risk for me, and a guy that I'm going to avoid at his price headed into this year. Jeremiah, what do you think about those 4 players that I talked about?
Funny enough, Mike, you talk about Jaden Reed. Underdog has a very perfect tweet. It's weeks 1 through 9, wide receiver 6 overall was Jayden Reed, and we had him up in the first 3 rounds, thinking of 2025's ADP. Weeks 10 through 15, wide receiver 48 overall, a huge slide down. What's hard about Jayden Reed is you're sitting there thinking, if he's done some past fantasy football production, that should generate the opportunity to do in forward. But a precipitous drop off from 20% target share earlier in the year all the way down to 14%. It just kept getting lower as the season went on for Jayden Reed. And it's kind of like the show Severance, the innie and outie concept, where one doesn't really know the other on the Apple TV show. Jayden Reed's skill set that he displayed the first half of the season versus the back half are just completely different. You wouldn't even recognize the players statistically on the back of the card. Funny enough, what you say about Michael Pittman Jr., remember round 3 and round 4, Michael Pittman Jr.? It's just a wonder that it's almost like you forget him and he's an afterthought. When I think of Colts wide receivers, I just think of Josh Downs. And at this moment, can Adonai Mitchell make a second-year leap? And then to your point, Mike, I think of the gridlock. I don't even get my mind to Michael Pittman Jr. because of the issues that are there that exist with Anthony Richardson. What will be his route in 2025? We really don't know. I love your call on Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, just now, 25 years old. I love that game. Probably the best game of the season. Browns and Broncos. Jerry Jeudy went all the way off. You have to have a little bit of a envisioning, a little bit like anticipatory chess piece mentality with the Browns actually believing in, I'm not going to blow up or set on fire after this, but the Browns will improve at quarterback. So when the Browns do improve, by that point, the price will go up on Jerry Jeudy. If you're able to acquire and have that faith, it's a little bit in your evaluation on where Jerry Jeudy is and the fact that you have an anticipatory mindset. If you're not early, you're late in fantasy football. So if you can practice that principle of being preemptive with somebody like Jalen Waddle, as I talked to before, if you can practice it with somebody like Jerry Jeudy, you can reap benefits and rewards and get plenty of fat that you can trim off the bone prior to the price liquidates and it sharpens quickly. And it's 1-for-1, and you're having to have a lot less room for any kind of error. Who was the fourth player that you mentioned? You had Reed, Pittman, and Jeudy.
And then the other one was, Juwan Jennings.
Yes. And with Juwan Jennings, funny enough, in writing up Deebo Samuel, it sounds like Deebo Samuel is out. He's going to likely get traded. Just a drop there. What's going to happen with Brandon Ayuk early on in the season? Ricky Pearsall, we expect to move up. People are probably a little bit more prone to clicking Ricky Pearsall late for value. Meantime, Juwan Jennings just went out there and produced and showed out. Somebody's going to line up for the 49ers. If it's not Deebo Samuel and there isn't an added receiver, by all means in the mix is Juwan Jennings. So that's somebody whose ADP on Underdog can crystallize and firm where it is. And then to your point on keep, trade, cut for dynasty sentiment, that is a viable play. We do have, Jamie. Hey, welcome, Jamie. He says, hey, guys, looks like I missed the whole show. The beauty is you can run it back and listen, but you're right on time, Jamie, for Combat Zone.
It's go time. It's go time. It's go time. We going up. We go.
So we've battled with Combat Zone 2 weeks ago, Mike. We did Emeka Egbuka versus Travis Hunter. I took Emeka Egbuka, the safer option versus the risk. Luther Burden, Trey Harris, both wideouts who are not in Daniel Jeremiah's most recent 2.0 mock in the first round. I mentioned Isaiah Bond not being in those mocks. Neither are Trey Harris and Luther Burden. That will change after the combine for both Luther Burden and Trey Harris. In this instance, though, I am taking Luther Burden the third as one of the top wide receiver prospects. Burden has an element of drafters fading him due to the need to being schemed up and worked into an NFL team's game plan. The concerns and worries are already there prior to. According to 247 Sports, Burden was a 5-star prospect. He was recruited by Alabama and Georgia and ended up with Missouri. That's a big deal. That's more history. When you document things, that is a pretty big deal. We see Deebo Samuel pop in the NFL, and now, of course, Deebo Samuel seems to be fading with his efficiency. There's the physicality that Samuel has endured, but remember how good Samuel was in his prime. And then you also have people getting burned by the Jaden Reeds, and even worse, Rondale Moore. So Luther Burden is a bona fide athlete who will get work as a weapon in the NFL. He and Teteroa McMillan are entirely different types of wideouts within the same position. I contend that Luther Burden will go to a team that schemes him up from the jump. We rag on NFL teams making poor decisions all the time, but I don't see how Burden can go to a team and not be utilized to his Swiss Army knife skill set. Imagine Luther Burden in Sean Payton's offense running wild. Compliment to Cortland Sutton. Sign me up. Imagine Luther Burden as a compliment to Terry McLaurin. When you think limitless with Luther Burden pairing to bullish landing spots, you can't help but salivate. Match the talent to the scheme, and you have a future league winner on your fantasy rosters where drafters are deliberating, well, I don't know how Luther Burden's going to get used in the NFL. He's sure is skilled. He's a 5-star prospect. He has all these metrics we like, but, I don't know about him just because of what I think might happen. Burden, 21.2 years of age, 5'11", 208 pounds, of course, will get the official height and weight at the NFL Combine. A junior declare Burden has the top NFL scouting record score for wideouts. On NFL.com, they have all the Combine attendees. Burden has a 647 scouting grade. Lance Zierlein has some good reports on him, some scouting notes that I'll get to in a moment. Trey Harris has a 634 score, which is 5th for wideout. So that's a comparison. Burden versus Trey Harris tonight. Some viewers may see Trey Harris and Burden as farther apart, but they are much closer than meets the eye. For the last 2 years for Luther Burden, receptions 86 down to 61, 120 targets down to 80, 1,209 yards to 676, 14.1 yards per reception down to 11.1, 9 touchdowns down to a not so nice 6 touchdowns. So you see the theme and the pattern. The penultimate season for Luther Burden, there's all these dips. Luther Burden is just the Ollie Gordon of wide receivers. Burden had the big sophomore season, had the production dip, yet he is still regarded at the top amongst the rookie wideouts. Otherwise, he could just go back to the NFL draft or to the college game and not declare for the NFL draft. 30 missed tackles forced in 2024, was number 1 at his position. Burden adds an element in the rushing game. In 2024, Burden had 9 carries for 115 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. The toothpaste won't just go back into the tube when Luther Burden enters the NFL. Lance Zierlein, in his scouting report, says Luther Burden has sudden, well-timed hands and can adjust to the deep ball like a baseball outfielder. You love to hear that tracking ability. Here's a stat that Zierlein labeled as a weakness. From PFF, 75% of Burden's targets come within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Zierlein labeled it as a weakness. I contend that getting Burden the ball close to the line of scrimmage via short passes, quick hitch routes, bubble screens, short slants, and a mix of carries will allow his speed to take over and maximize his skill set. Give me the volatility of Luther Burden with asymmetrical upside versus the more traditional archetype in Trey Harris. Trey Harris is a bond to Luther Burden being a high upside growth stock. Sign me up, Luther Burden. Mike, what do you got on Trey Harris?
I really like Trey Harris. I'm more on the metric side of things. Luther Burden for me has gotten, a lot of hype, this last offseason and then heading into this year, he kind of fell off there because, like you mentioned, he just wasn't as prolific as his, sophomore year. So between Trey Harris and Luther Burden, they both are very promising prospects in this draft class. But when comparing the two for fantasy football potential, I'm going to take the Harris side over Burden because they both bring a lot of strengths to the table, but Harris stands out with his well-rounded skill set, proven production, and ideal physical traits. Burden may dazzle you with his burst and his ability to break tackles, but his game is inconsistent, and his reliance on manufactured touches limits his upside. Harris, with his size and contested catch prowess, offers more of a polished and reliable profiler for me in the NFL for success, making him a safer bet for fantasy gamers. His first 5 stats here that I'm going to go over here make him more appealing to me. 5.12 yards per route run. That was best in college football last year. It showcases his efficiency and ability to generate yardage consistently, making him a steady contributor in fantasy leagues. A 95 PFF grade against man coverage. He excels at separating from defenders in tight coverage, proving he can win in those contested situations. He's got a 70% catch rate in contested targets, which is more than I thought he was going to be. I thought he was more of a 50-50 guy, but when I looked into these stats, that's impressive to me. He still has some room to improve there, so that's even better. 16.1 yards per reception. That's an impressive average that highlights his ability to stretch the field and create big plays, a valuable trait for fantasy gamers seeking that explosive potential. He makes his quarterbacks better around him. A 143 QBR rating when targeted. He ranks at the top of his class. It shows elite ball tracking and execution when his number is called. So Burden's explosive playmaking ability is enticing, but I just think Harris offers more of a complete, consistent, and physical dominant skill set, positions him for a safer, higher upside, but it's splitting hairs right now, if you will. I like them both. Burden is outside my top 5. He's sitting at my number 5 in this class, and I got Harris at 4. I really like Ibuka. He's my number 1, and Ted is my number 2 right now, sitting in here. So you're on mute there, Coach.
Sorry, mate. Trying to be respectful. Maybe I drank too much maple syrup prior to the show. Mike, love when you talk about Emeka Ibuka. Huge fan of him. So I'm sold there already. Luther Burden and Trey Harris, it's funny because they're both going to rise so much. I really love Trey Harris, what he does. His stats against man coverage are dynamite. Like you said, what he does for his quarterback, Jackson Dart. Is it the chicken or the egg? Is it Dart for Trey Harris? Is it Trey Harris being open for Jackson Dart? I think it's just a little bit of both. They're good skilled players. You're just getting different archetypes with Luther Burden and with Trey Harris. For me, I'm investing and starting to have more of that faith that Luther Burden is really going to be capitalized upon. And the lesson where you have teams and front offices select players and try and mold them to fit a scheme versus trying to identify their talent and scheme to it. I just have this bullish faith that Luther Burden is going to land somewhere where they utilize him to a T versus wasting him. We see that happen all the time in the NFL. I'm just going to take the opportunity to be bullish for his landing spot. And let's see what Chev has to say. He's bricked up for Trey Harris. Aren't we all, man? Absolutely. He also says Trey Harris stonks, about to hit like prime Mike Tyson. You love to see it. Well, Luther Burden's going to be Buster Douglas in this instance, but I'm with you. And then let's go to Captain Joking. Love that name. Hi, can you explain to me why I am not excited at all about Teteroa McMillan? I really don't like where he is going in mocks at 6, 7, 8. I think he's speaking to the actual NFL draft because 6, 7, 8 in rookie drafts, I'm looking at Tet McMillan, Superflex data. I have 2.3 ADP overall. with Cam Ward going 4th as a first quarterback. So he's right behind Ashton Janty. So I got to think this is very early to the real NFL. I mean, if his comp is Drake London, he should be a late first is what he's saying. I think what happens with somebody like Teteroa McMillan is the archetype of Teteroa McMillan's larger size is kind of been trendy a bit out. You get these smaller wide receivers who have come in, and I just spoke up to Luther Burden being phenomenal, but you have bigger framed wide receivers who are still more traditional, who you should not sleep on and have fatigue on per se. It doesn't preclude them from being phenomenal in the NFL. So I see Teteroa McMillan absolutely being fine. And it's just like with tight ends. The argument will be that tight ends, they have to be shorter, a little bit more athletic, a little lighter, that they can't hang when they're 6'4" and 245. They got to be 6'3" and 230. I don't buy into that. I look at it more as talent is talent. It wins through. I think what's happening, Captain Joking, is that there's some fatigue on the part of Teteroa McMillan, just maybe not being as flashy as somebody, say, Jordan Addison, right? Don't get swept up on the archetype and think that he's going to be bad. And also, because we haven't gotten there with Drake London yet, try to not let that inform you on Teteroa McMillan. They might have the similar archetype, but it doesn't mean they're going to have the same path. It may be a more linear path for Teteroa McMillan. And of course, Drake London is about to get fed with Michael Penix Jr. We're absolutely bullish. What do you got on that, Mike?
No, I like that call. And yeah, it's looking like a really good situation here for these rookies and these wide receivers that are kind of all in the flux here. They're kind of all in a very similar tier. There's nobody really, standing out as the go-to guy. I like Ibuka here. He's my number one. And that's why I'm not so high on Tet. Let's see if we got anything else here. Look for Ricky White later in rookie drafts as the discount version of Tet if you can get day 2 capital. Yeah.
Get him in round 5, Ricky White. Another guy I really like, and Biggs has really talked him up as well, Jaden Higgins. I know Jax Falcone is big on Jaden Higgins. If you want a Teteroa McMillan archetype and you don't want to pay up, Captain Joe King, why don't you go out and get yourself some Jaden Higgins? Less risk there. You could then alleviate that concern and then satisfy Captain Joe King, somebody like Luther Burden, a different body type in a Mecca Buka, who's a PPR merchant, and then go later for that archetype if you don't want to.
You're going to look at Jaden Higgins. He's going to be a huge riser coming up here. He's got some really important metrics that we're diving in over at the Undroppables, and it's looking really, really good for him. He not only wins, as that big body, deep threat guy, like he creates separation in all areas of the field, in the middle of the field as well. He's going to be that guy. And Jaden Higgins is going to be somebody that we're going to be talking about. He's going to be rising up boards. Just wait and see. And then, yeah, you look Ao Manor, what another guy that is moving up. His yards per route run is up there. His first down per route run is up there. He's able to create separation. He's one of those physical wide receivers. I love where he's headed here too. So yeah, let's go on this one, folks.
Yeah, Alec Ao Manor, the neat thing about him, what jumps off besides the game he had against Travis Hunter, where he had 3 touchdowns and 274 yards receiving. The cool thing about Alec Ao Manor, I liken it to when the ball is thrown from third base to first base. Alec Ao Manor is able to stretch to the football and close that gap between the line drive of the football coming to his direction, and he can receive the ball in. There's just something neat about how he's able to angle his body. It's a subtle thing. Alec Ao Manor, another player who could absolutely rise. And let's get everyone knows I was the first person to the cement aisle for Jaden Higgins. Absolutely, Chev, you were there, but Biggs might have just been a little bit louder, right? And that's a shout out to Chev and Biggs. There are 2 fantasy football co-hosts on the Dynasty Pulse. So everybody, thank you for showing up. Mike, do you have anything for us as we head into the NFL Combine?
I also mentioned Higgins pretty early in the process too, so we're all going to take our credit here as well. So yeah, we were all big on Higgins and also A.O. Manor as well. So let's go. Hey Chev, where are you? That one that called Taylor Elgizma the Canuck Cannon? Nah, the catching Canuck is where we're at here, folks. Yeah.
Well, look, one thing Chev is not first on is Ladarius Shadarius. So that should tell you everything that you need to know. Tight end Ladarius Shadarius. Don't let anybody fool you. Absolute stud. Folks, we have the NFL Combine coming up this weekend. Stay busy. Stay in tune. What I would say is don't let the NFL Combine sway you on players, but let it inform you further. Use it as a piece, but don't let it be something that completely changes you, has you reactionary. Don't be a prisoner of the moment, but by all means, let it add to what you've already been learning and just be an element, because there's going to be pro days. And of course, there's going to be the NFL draft, then the off-season reports, how things are going. So there's a long way to go from here. We're just here at that moment in time. We will see you all next week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.